Four value questions. Four questions to ask about features when assessing value. Now, I'm using the word feature in a generic sense. I'm simply talking about a product backlog item, a request. And these four questions that we're about to go through tend to be the most common questions that product owners need to address when understanding the value of their product backlog items. We know that the product owners are responsible to explain what they're looking for, but they're also responsible to explain why. By understanding why, it helps our developers make good decisions. It helps our stakeholders understand where the product is headed. And the why question is really related to the value of the item. The first two questions related to value have to do with money. First, how much money will this feature make us or save us if it's a cost savings effort? And closely connected with that is how much money will this feature cost? Now, that cost assessment also needs to include ongoing costs. It's possible you might be delivering something that, for example, increased our support cost. We should understand that. Now, those first two questions having to do with money, financial questions, are usually the driving force behind value assessment in profit-focused organizations, organizations that are trying to make money, of course. But those first two questions are not always the most important questions in every organization. For example, in some government organizations, those financial questions are not the most important questions. In some startups, in some nonprofits, in some educational institutions, etc., those financial questions may not be the most important questions. Now, the next two questions are usually modifiers against the financial questions. However, in some of those organizations that are not primarily focused on making money, these next questions may be the primary questions that they're thinking about. So next, question number three, how much more will we understand? How much more will we learn about the product and the project by developing this particular feature? Knowledge gained has value. Understanding where we have knowledge gaps and how we can fill those gaps could be valuable. Value in terms of the product, which addresses the what question. We may recognize we have knowledge gaps in what our customer or our market truly wants. What should we be delivering? For example, we might say, oh, if we deliver this feature next, we're going to learn so much more about what our customer needs. It'll help us set direction going forward. Knowledge about the project is addressing the how aspect of the work, recognizing where we have gaps in how we can deliver, and then filling those gaps could bring value. For example, oh, if we deliver this feature next, we're going to learn so much more about this new technology that it'll put us in a better position for next year's efforts. That could have value. And the fourth question, how much risk can we reduce by developing a particular feature? Risk mitigation could have value. Now, I'm talking about negative risk. I'm not talking about positive risk. We can have a separate discussion about that. But negative risk, the odds of something disruptive or something bad, if you will, happening. Technical risk, business risk, different assessments can be made here, even a simple assessment of high, medium, and low risk. Now, if you believe that risk will be reduced over time, then maybe that risk question is not going to come into play for your value assessment. However, if you do not see that risk abating unless you do something about it, addressing that risk earlier could be more valuable to you because the longer you leave that item out there, the riskier it becomes because you have less time to address it. Those are the four most common questions. Now, unfortunately, there is a fifth consideration that tends to trump all the sophisticated conversations you might have about value assessment. And that overarching consideration is under the heading dependencies. Those things out of your control will sometimes have this amazing ability to crush the best plans you have for delivering value. Now, we'll have to have another session just to talk about dependencies, but please still proceed with your value assessments and then understand how dependencies might impact your ability to actually deliver value.